Hi guys and welcome to another Edureka session. For today's topic, we are looking at AWS Solutions Architect Certification. This credential helps individuals showcase advanced knowledge and skills in providing complex solutions to complex problems using AWS Cloud technology. So let's begin today's session. Like always, let's define our agenda first. We'll start by talking about who is an AWS Solutions Architect, followed by the roadmap to getting the certification. After that, we'll see how to acquire the Solutions Architect certification and learn about the exam. And at the end, we will go over how you can prepare for this exam. So let's start by talking about who is an AWS Solutions Architect. Well, an AWS Solutions Architect is a professional who is responsible for designing and implementing systems and services on the AWS platform. This can include designing and building scalable and highly available infrastructure, developing and deploying applications, and creating and implementing security and compliance solutions. AWS Solutions Architect typically have a strong understanding of various AWS services and how they can be used to meet the needs of the organization. They may also have the experience with other cloud platforms and traditional IT infrastructure, such as Microsoft Azure or Google Cloud Platform. The job responsibilities of an AWS Solutions Architect can vary depending on the specific organization and project, but they generally include designing and building scalable, highly available, and fault-tolerant systems on AWS platform, developing and deploying applications on AWS using services such as Elastic Beanstalk, EC2, and S3, creating and implementing security and compliance solutions such as network segmentation, access controls, and security logging. Providing guidance and best practices to developers and other teams on how to use AWS services effectively. Managing and optimizing AWS cost, and at the end, staying up to date with new AWS services and features and providing recommendations for adoption. What's the roadmap to getting the AWS Solutions Architect certification? The general roadmap looks something like this. These three exams can be thought of as a checkpoint. First, we have the AWS Cloud Practitioner Certificate. This is the foundation and shows that you are familiar with the AWS services. The AWS Certified Cloud Practitioners offers a foundational understanding of AWS cloud concepts, services, and terminology. This is a good starting point for individuals in non-technical roles with no prior IT or cloud experience. The second checkpoint is the associate level exam for AWS Solutions Architect. This exam showcases knowledge and skills in AWS technology across a wide range of AWS services. The focus of this certification is on the design of cost and performance optimized solutions, demonstrating a strong understanding of the AWS well-architected framework. This certification can enhance the career profile and earnings of certified individuals and increase your credibility and confidence in stakeholder and customer interaction. And finally, the professional level of AWS Solutions Architect certification showcases that an individual has advanced knowledge and skills in providing complex solutions to complex problems, optimizing security, cost, and performance, and automating manual processes. This certification is a means for organizations to identify and develop talent with these critical skills for implementing cloud initiatives. So, what are the steps to getting the AWS Solutions Architect certification? Well, the process is quite simple to be honest. You need to go to aws.amazon.com/certification. Just sign up and enroll for the AWS Solutions Architects exam. You will be asked to schedule the exam, and based on your availability, you can select when you want to appear for the exam. After that, it's just standard protocol and you just fill in your details, and after that, you'll just give the exam. And once the results are out, you will be notified. And hopefully, you will pass the exam in the first attempt. So, let's talk just a little bit about the exam now. Well, let's start with the pricing. You need to pay for the AWS certifications exam in the official website. Depending on the exam types, the prices vary. Here's a general look at the pricing for certain exam types. The foundational level exam, which is AWS Cloud Practitioner, costs about 100 US dollars or 90 euros. The associate level exam costs 150 US dollars or 135 euros. The AWS Solutions Architect and Developer has this level of exam available. For the professional level, we have Solutions Architect and DevOps Engineer certifications that cost about 300 US dollars or 270 euros. And apart from these, the specialty level of exam costs the same, that is 300 US dollars or 270 euros. The specialty exams showcases your deep knowledge within a specific area. This may include advanced networking, data analytics, data management, machine learning, and so on. Now, let's talk about the question types. Mainly, there are two types of questions that will appear in the exam. First is the multiple choice questions. These will have questions followed by A, B, C, D options. Only one option is true and you will have to select that only. The second type of question that appears in the exam are multiple response questions. In these questions, you will have A, B, C, D type options, but there are more than one correct answer. So, A and B, if both are correct, you will have to select them both. It is also good to know that if you have selected only one correct response in multiple response question, you will not get any score for it. Also, there is no penalty for guessing, so it is a better choice to not leave any question unanswered during the exam. So what's the format of the exam? Let's compare the associate and professional levels for the AWS Solutions Architect certificate. The time available for exam is 130 minutes for Solutions Architect Associate exam, whereas for the professional level, the time is 180 minutes. The cost for associate certification is 150 US dollars, whereas for the professional, it costs about 300 US dollars. The number of questions is also not that different between these. As you can see, there are 65 questions for the associate level exam and the professional level exam for AWS Solutions Architect has 75 questions. And for both these exams, you can either take the exam at the center by selecting the center during the scheduling of the exam or choose to take the exam online. Now, this is just my personal preference, but I would suggest you to take the exam at the center ideally. But this may not work for some people, but then again, it's just my suggestion. Now, let's talk about the scoring. You are rated on a scale of 100 to 1000, and the cutoff to pass the associate level exam for AWS Solutions Architect is 720. For the professional exam of the same, the minimum score you must obtain is 750. So you will have to score above this to get the certification. And of course, if you can't pass in the first attempt, you can take the exam again. With that done, let's talk about the types of questions that will appear in the AWS Solutions Architect Professional exam. The content outline for this exam is, as you can see, comes from four major domains. The design solutions for organizational complexity accounts for 26% of the question asked in the exam, followed by design for new solutions that accounts for 29% of the questions. Continuous improvement for existing solutions and accelerate workload migration and modernization accounts for 25% and 20% of the questions respectively. So, you will need to prepare a lot in order to ace these exams. In general, you should already have a dedicated time slot every single day to prepare for the exam. And with that, let's talk about how you can prepare for the AWS Solutions Architect examination. First, masters the basics, and these are the foundations. As you can see, networking, computer security, computer architecture, and learning about SQL and Linux fundamentals is crucial. And to get better at foundation, it is also advised to get cloud practitioner certifications. You should also try building projects using AWS. Build a portfolio of projects so that you can get a better understanding of how different AWS services work together. Next, it is important for you to practice core AWS services. These includes these services. And with the free tier account, you can get started and experimenting with these services. You have to understand that most projects use a majority of these services, so it is ideal and crucial that you have a thorough understanding of it. Next, you should also read white papers and refer to the FAQs to understand simple and complex things with ease. The white paper generally contains everything you need to pass the exam, but it is the real world knowledge and proficiency of AWS that will make you better. Also, you should practice the sample questions. And now, let's look at some questions right now. So here we have a question and it says, a company has many AWS accounts that individual business groups own. One of the account was recently compromised, and this means that it was probably hacked. So the attacker launched a number of instances, resulting in high bill for the account. The company addressed the security breach, but a solutions architect needs to develop a solution to prevent excessive spending in all accounts. And each business group wants to retain full control of its AWS account. So, among these options, which solution do you think is the best? I'll give you a minute. Think about it. Okay, so the correct answer is here is C. And the reason is because billing alarms will provide the company with alerts about excessive spending without taking away control from any of the business group. Options A and B are incorrect because each business group wants to retain control of its account, which is mentioned in the question. These options would not prevent the launch of large number of instances. And option D is a manual process that will not provide immediate alerts about excessive spending. So let's look at another question. Here, a company has multiple AWS accounts in an organization in AWS organizations. The company has integrated its on-premise Active Directory with AWS single sign-on to grant Active Directory users least privilege permissions to manage infrastructure across all the accounts. A solutions architect must integrate a third-party monitoring solution that requires read-only access across all AWS solutions. The monitoring solution will run in its own AWS account. So now, again, I'll give you some time, think about it, and select one of these options. I'll give you a hint. Option C is incorrect. Okay, so the correct answer over here is D. And the reason for this is because AWS Cloud Formation stack sets can deploy the IAM role across multiple accounts within a single operation. Option A is incorrect because credentials that are supplied by the AWS single sign-on are temporary, so it won't make sense, and the application will lose permissions and would have to log in again. Now, the reason why option B is not ideal is again because option B would only grant access to the management account only. And as I mentioned in the hint, option C is incorrect. And the reason for that is because when an account joins an organization, the account does not receive permissions to access the other accounts in the organization. So let's look at our third question. A team is building an HTML form that is hosted in public Amazon S3 bucket. The form uses JavaScript to post data to an Amazon API gateway API endpoint. The API endpoint is integrated with AWS Lambda function. The team has tested each method in the API gateway console and has received valid responses. So, as you can see, it says here you have to select two options. This is the type multiple response type question. So here there are more than one correct answer. So here you will have to select two options. Now think about it. Okay, so if you need more time here, you can pause the video. But here the correct answers are D and E. So let's understand how. So the CORS or cross-origin resource sharing is a browser-based security feature that restricts HTTP requests that initiate from scripts that run in a browser. Now, Course is typically required to build web applications that access APIs that are hosted on a different domain or origin. And you can enable course to allow requests to your API from a web application that is hosted on a different domain. So this is why D option is correct. And option E is required for the HTML form to be served through a website endpoint. Now let's look at why option A is incorrect. And that is because the course header must be configured to be returned by the dynamic response from the API endpoint. The configuration of course for the S3 bucket does not help. And option B is incorrect because there is no advantage to serving a static web page from a web server that runs on Amazon EC2 instead of S3 bucket. And option 3 is incorrect because API gateway has a default quota of 10,000 requests per second for each AWS region. So with that, let's move on to our next question. A company runs a serverless mobile app that uses Amazon API Gateway, AWS Lambda function, Amazon Cognito, and Amazon DynamoDB. During large surges in traffic, users report intermittent system failures. The API Gateway API endpoint is returning HTTP status code 502, which stands for bad gateway, errors to validate request. Which solutions will resolve these issues? Again, think about it carefully and take your time. Okay, so you can pause the video if you still need time, but the correct answer over here is A. That is because Amazon API Gateway will intermittently return HTTP status code 502 errors if the AWS Lambda function exceeds its concurrency quota. Option B is incorrect because in this case, API Gateway would return the status code 429 error for too many requests. Option C is incorrect because the errors occur during calls to the API Gateway API endpoint, not during the authentication process. And option D is incorrect because stale data would not cause a bad gateway error at all. Let's move on to another question. A company is launching a new web service on an Amazon Elastic Container Service, which also stands for Amazon ECS cluster. The cluster consists of 100 Amazon EC2 instances. The company policy requires the security group on the cluster instances to block all inbound traffic except HTTPS, which is port 443. Which solution will meet these requirements? Think about the options, guys. This one is a little tricky. So the correct answer here is C. The AWS System Manager run command requires no inbound ports to be open. Run command operates entirely over outbound HTTPS, which is open by default for security groups. Option A and B are incorrect because the requirements state that only inbound ports should be open, which is 443. Option D is incorrect because AWS Trusted Advisor does not perform this management function. So again, let's continue on how you can prepare for the exam. You can also try out AWS Skill Builder. It is offered by AWS and it has many practice questions that you can use to learn and prepare for the AWS Solutions Architect Certification. And lastly, you can also opt in for an online certification training program or check out our course as well. Our program will help you become proficient at AWS, learn the core concepts, and ace the Solutions Architect exam. And we have a structured way that will help you get better at AWS as well as prepare you for the AWS Solutions Architect examination. So if you are a beginner, you can check out the links in the description below and get into the world of cloud computing today. And with that, the session is concluded. I hope that some of your questions were answered in this session about the AWS Solutions Architect certification. And if they were not, don't forget to leave a comment down below. And if you have any queries or questions, do message us or leave a comment and we will get back to you at the earliest.